Thank you so much for joining me today. Today I am in conversation with Dr. Róbert Ondrejcsák, who has worked in international relations for almost 25 years, moving between Slovakia's Ministry of Foreign Affairs, Ministry of Defense, and the world of academia and think tanks. He's being a lecturer at Comenius University and Matej University in Slovakia on international security studies, geopolitics, and European and Transatlantic security. In 2016, he founded STRATPOL in Bratislava, a think tank focusing on international relations and security, particularly on strategic communication and propaganda. He has served twice as Slovakia's Secretary of State, for the Ministry of Defense, and was most recently appointed ambassador of the Embassy of the Slovak Republic to the United Kingdom, which is a wonderful and exciting time, I would say, to be in such a prestigious position. So thank you so much, Dr. Ondrejcsák, for joining me today.
Thank you very much for the opportunity. Thank you.
No worries. So really, I just want to begin sort of discussing, in light of recent events and the turmoil that is currently waging in Ukraine at the hands of the Russian invasion, what are some of your thoughts on how we will support Ukraine at this time?
It is very important to know that Ukraine is not fighting just for himself or just for Ukraine and Ukrainian people. Ukraine's fight is a struggle for the security of whole Europe and the whole transatlantic community. This Russian aggression was, even though we knew some information in advance, but we were hoping till the very last moment that it's not going to happen. And this Russian aggression has no precedent in modern history of Europe. So it's the reason why I believe that Slovakia, Central Europe, and NATO countries were obliged to help our eastern neighbor. First of all, because of the moral context. So a democracy is fighting with the aggressor, which is an autocratic dictatorship. And second, because it is in our own strategic interest. Ukrainian security is very closely interlinked to security of Europe. And if Ukraine would fail, it would very, very negatively harm our security too.
No, I completely agree. And it's really fascinating, the implications, the wider implications that will come of this, something that's fascinating, but also extremely scary. So I'd like to focus a little bit on your expertise and your role in diplomacy as an ambassador. What are some of the diplomatic efforts that Europe can take as a whole to try and de-escalate this situation? I understand that we are trying to bring both parties around the discussion table, and it hasn't been completely fruitful as now. So I just wondered your thoughts on this.
Yes, I believe that first of all we need to make it absolutely clear who is the aggressor and who is the victim, and then we can basically move forward. I mean, in this situation, Ukraine is the victim and Russia is the aggressor, and our diplomatic efforts basically needs to based on this sentence and this reality. Obviously, the most important diplomatic effort is to try to create a very broad international coalition which is going to support Ukraine, or which is supporting Ukraine, of course. And second, which is able to raise the cost for Russians for this invasion. So if we are able to show unity and strength in this moment, then it will help, of course, Ukraine on diplomatic field, because they will feel very strong support. Second, this strength must be transformed into very particular help of military help, of military material to Ukraine, which basically everybody in Europe, or almost everybody in Europe, is doing, from United Kingdom to Slovakia. And many other countries. And third one, as I mentioned, we need to be united in terms of how to basically show Russians that this is absolutely inadequate, and this invasion at the very end will harm Russia, Russian positions in the international community very badly, and also the consequences of economic sanctions and political decisions will be absolutely catastrophic for the future of Russia. So those three pillars we need to build up, and we need to strengthen, basically.
It's fascinating. I read an article the other week that the war with the current sanctions is costing Russia $20 million a day, $20 billion a day, sorry. That's just wild. I mean, it's truly devastating.
Yes, it's unbelievable. Yes, indeed. I mean, of course, there are the direct cost of the war, because every war is very costly, obviously, because you need to deploy forces, you need to sustain forces, you need to support them. So the costs of the war itself are obviously very high. And there are those secondary consequences because of the Western reaction and Western sanctions. And basically, the United Kingdom, Europe, North America, the US and Canada, plus our partners in the Pacific region, Australia, Japan, and others, basically, we are representing 2/3 of the global GDP. So it's such a serious strength, which can generate a real impact on Russian economy. And on the other hand, Russia's economy is smaller than a middle-sized European country. So Russia's economy represents 2.5, maximum 3% of the global GDP. And on the other side, we the broader West, plus our partners, we really represent 2/3 of the global GDP. So it's a very important data, basically, and it's a very important leverage and opportunity for the West to make a very strong pressure on Russia to stop this invasion and to stop this aggression.
No, I didn't know that fact about the sanctions.
Yes,
That's fascinating. I'd like to delve a bit more into your sort of expertise as a twice-serving Minister of Defence. So I understand that this is definitely something that you have a lot of sort of background knowledge on. The invasion itself isn't just the military side. As Russia has shown in the past, it has become a little bit of a force to be reckoned with in the cyber world. And hybrid warfare is something that Russia has been deploying in Ukraine since 2014. I just wondered what some of your thoughts were on this and how sort of what we could do as a united Europe to overcome this sort of other aspect of the conflict.
Yes, indeed, it's a very good remark. Beyond the very brutal military force, Russians are employing other aspects, other pillars of the warfare, including cyber attacks, of course, including hybrid attacks and hybrid warfare, and as a very important part, traditionally in Russian way of doing things. Is the propaganda and disinformation. Fortunately, probably first time after 2014, the Ukrainians and Europe and the West were able to react in a quite efficient way on Russian propaganda and disinformation. Now what we are seeing is that basically we were able to neutralize, if not completely, but in a quite serious extent, we were able to neutralize the Russian propaganda and information warfare towards our countries. What we are not able so far to do so efficiently is to impact somehow the Russia's propaganda towards their own population. This Russian information space is a very closed one. It's very much state controlled, and basically they're able to project their own propaganda towards their population, and of course it affects the strategic decisions of the Russian elites, but also the opinions of the public. We see that the Russian public is fed by lies and disinformation, and obviously the result is a quite high percentage, quite high percentage of support for this war, which goes absolutely contrary to interest of Russian people and Russia itself, because Russia cannot win this war in long term, and Russia will lose, and it will very negatively affect the way of life and quality of life of Russian people.
Yeah, I know, it's really quite a sad detriment to the, and it's, as you watch sort of daily, I know that journalists are pulling out of Russia because of the new law about 15 years imprisonment for spreading misinformation. You know, it's like the isolation of just the average Russian citizen is just devastating. It's so sad to see. With regards to sort of a collective military response, there has been a lot of calls from Ukraine and President Zelensky himself for a no-fly zone, which in my opinion, very valid reasons is not being pursued due to the sort of escalation of conflict. I was wondering what your sort of thoughts and, in your opinion, what NATO could do, what some of its policy options might be for NATO and its partners in response.
First of all, NATO is a defensive military alliance, and the NATO's most important purpose or raison d'etre is the defense of their own members. So it's why NATO was created, and it's why NATO is so successful. And the NATO's reactions were determined by this. The first steps NATO did, and not only NATO, but most importantly the member states, including the most important member states, the United States, United Kingdom, Germany, and others. Basically, it was declared that the alliance will defend every square meter of its territory of any member state. So NATO and the allies, they are standing beyond or they're standing next to their allies in Central Europe. So this political declaration was very important, obviously, but the second step, the particular steps, were even more important, and it was a very robust and very rapid deployment of allied troops to region of Central Europe and Baltic countries, because it's a very concrete, very particular expression of the NATO's purpose, the collective defense. In first round, some units from the United States, United Kingdom, and other countries were deployed to Baltic region and Central Europe. And in the second round, there was a decision to create additional NATO battle groups in my region or region of Central Europe. As we know, after 2014, the so-called NATO battle groups were created in Estonia, Latvia, Lithuania, and Poland within part of enhanced forward presence. But some other countries were not part of this initiative, including Slovakia, and I'm very happy that we overcame this situation, and there was a political decision at allied level, but also in Slovakia, that a new NATO battle group will be established there. So our parliament already approved, our government already approved the deployment of allied troops to Slovak territory. It will be around 2,100 soldiers from different countries, different member states of NATO, including Czech Republic, Poland, Germany, Slovenia, and the United States, and the Netherlands. And it's very important because probably it's one of the most important decisions for Slovak security policy in 30 years, that will have NATO troops in our territory and will feel much safer and much better prepared for any escalation.
Oh gosh, I didn't know that. That's fascinating. How are things on the ground in Slovakia? I mean, I think Poland and Moldova, Romania get a lot of press because of obviously the refugee crisis and bordering, but you know, Slovakia also borders Ukraine, and as you've just said, you're for the first time having the important decision made about having NATO presence there. I just wondered if there was anything that you'd like to share about that.
Yes, obviously, beyond the military response, we are responding in a humanitarian field. Beyond Poland, Romania, and other countries, of course, Slovakia is also a target country for Ukrainian refugees. So far, we provided shelter for more than 230,000 people within basically 2 weeks. So it's more than 200,000 people that found safety in Slovakia. We offered them a very very efficient, I believe, or I believe and I hope, very efficient support from free healthcare to schooling, even some material support. And I was very, very positively surprised by the responses of Slovak society, and I was very proud of my country and people there, that a huge wave of solidarity was generated, and people are offering their houses, people are offering their properties basically for refugees. So of course the state is reacting and doing those humanitarian hubs, but beyond the state response, the people were very positively and very efficiently reacting from the very first moment. And the very vast majority of citizens of Slovakia, they are simply supporting this humanitarian aspect of our response. And really, it's not an easy situation, obviously. I mean, we were not even thinking about, obviously we were thinking about the potential refugee wave, but we were not thinking that it will be so enormous. I mean, as I mentioned, it's more than 200,000 people only in Slovakia. So basically we allowed everybody to come even without passport, without whatever. So everybody who wanted to come to Slovakia, we just allowed them to enter. So obviously it's very important to have this solidarity from our partners and friends abroad. Yes.
Yeah, that's so heartwarming to hear of the response of countries, especially in sort of Central and Southeastern Europe and that area, that have done so well and so much. Obviously, the United Kingdom has faltered. Our government has not handled every aspect maybe as it should have, I think would be the most down the middle way to say that. But I have also signed up for the Homes for Ukrainian Refugees. Obviously it's a bit more tricky, we're not a land border, so it's a process of getting here, but we had 100,000 people sign up in the first day. So I attended. Yeah, it's really wonderful. I attended a lecture by Professor Christopher Coker, where he spoke about this, and one of his comments was that Putin's main strategic fail, really the thing that he really miscalculated, is how much this has united Europe, and I would agree.
Yes, indeed.
Yeah.
Indeed, I believe that the Russian leadership didn't count with such a robust and united response from Europe and the West. I believe that they were trying, as always, they were trying to divide us. They were trying to play those divided impera games, as they always did within NATO, within European Union. But fortunately, this war is such an important watershed in European security, and it will define life of at least one generation, I believe. So that word which we experienced even a month ago is just gone. And what is very important to know, that it's not something which will be over in a week or 2 weeks. It's a systematic change. So it's not just something which will just. So we will not be able to go back to status quo ante, to that situation in relations with Russia, because simply the Russian leadership changed completely everything from the basics, and it's really so important change that we had to react, and probably they just underestimated this unity and strength of the West. They thought that as we reacted basically after 2014, after the annexation of Crimea, that this will just happen again, that we will make some, or we will introduce some sanctions, but then we will somehow make them quite light or easy to bypass. But now it's really those sanctions and those steps, they are quite robust, and they're affecting they will affect the daily life of every single Russian citizen.
Yeah, it's quite a sobering thought, actually, because innocent and unwilling Russian citizens will be affected. Obviously, the images and news that come out of Ukraine daily is harrowing. And it's going to be felt the world over. You know, we are going to enter a cost of living crisis here in the West. Energy will go up. People will be worse off. It will affect us. But I think you are really right that this is sort of a pinnacle watershed moment for European history, and something good can come out of this if we make the systemic changes that we need, like you said. I would like to thank you so much for your time this afternoon, Ambassador Ondrejcsak, and thank you for sharing some really interesting thoughts there. I would like to mention that you will be joining the LSE for our event on the 24th of March, alongside Dr. Mykola Natovsky, who is the advisor to the Foreign Minister of Ukraine, Tanya Latic, who is from the European External Action Service, Simona Soar, who is from the Institute of International Security Studies, and Professor Tamila Lankina from the London School of Economics. So I really look forward to welcoming you there again and hearing more of your thoughts on this really important issue. But for now, thank you. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much. It was my privilege. Thank you so much.